Hi, welcome back to the Clark County Public Library. I'm Julie Maruskin, and I'm checking in on some of the seeds that we started. These are all tomato seeds, and you can see I've got germination in every single one of the 16 varieties that I trialed this year. So we started the large flat, the ones where the plants are a little bit bigger, and they're already starting to show their second true leaf. I know it's hard to see in here, but if you look in front of my fingernail, that's the true leaf. And when that leaf is as long or nearly as long as the seed leaf, that's the first leaf to emerge, these are going to be ready to transplant into a larger container. I did have something exciting happen. I have my last one that's sort of bringing up the rear, so I'm going to show you what we do once we do have germination. This just barely has germination. The seeds are starting to break the soil a little bit. They're doing what I call breaching. They look like green, tiny green humpback whales that are sort of leaping up out of the soil before they put their seed leaves out. But I had a nice surprise. One of my very favorite tomatoes is Jean Flamme, or Flamme, and it is a salad tomato. It's orange with a peachy red blush, like a sunrise. And it's a wonderful tomato. It tastes wonderful, absolutely wonderful, fresh. It's very productive, and it's an older French variety. But I had run out of my own seed, and so I had seed that I had bought from a commercial source from Tomato Growers Supply Company in Florida. And my seed was from 2012. So that means that I started 8-year-old tomato seed that I had not kept in the fridge. I hadn't kept it in the freezer. It has been in its paper packet at room temperature in my office since 2012. So I double sowed it. I put in twice as much seed, and probably, to tell you the truth, 3 times as much seed as I should have. So I probably have somewhere between 50 and 60 seeds in this flat. And right now, this is 5 days later. This flat has had bottom heat to help it germinate, because I did have some older seeds. All of the seeds from this in this flat where they were bigger, I did not have on bottom heat initially because the seed was very fresh. So it was all last year's seed or the seed before, and bottom heat just usually isn't necessary in a house or a building that's temperature controlled to get tomato seed to come up. With peppers, it is. So, and I'll show you some of the peppers that I have and how I have those arranged. They are on a heat map. But Jean Flamme actually came up. I have germination, and these were started on April Fool's Day, so that was, I guess, my April Fool's surprise. So you can see I have at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I probably have at least 15 seedlings that are just coming up today. And my last to come up is this little guy, and you can see that I have the top rubber banded on. You could also tape it on, and some of them will just stay on. But once I have germination, this is Heinz 1350, and I'm a little unsure of why this one has taken longer to germinate, but it is germinating because this was fresher seed. And it is coming up. Once I have germination, I remove this lid, put it aside to use later. I do wash these. You want to wash all of the plastics that you're going to save for the next year. You can wash them usually in Dawn dishwashing liquid, and that takes care of a lot of the germs. If you wanted to wash them in something stronger, you can try a bleach solution, a very mild bleach solution, if you want to. But because these are not quite up, I'm going to give them, I don't want the soil at the top to dry out, so I'm going to leave the lid on until tomorrow, and tomorrow morning, from the look of things, I'll have them up as tall as these are. As you can see, I've already taken the tops off. I'm going to show you something that I like to use. I don't always use it, but when I start indoors, a lot of times I'll end up with problems with damping off, and a lot of people say, you know, I was able to get my seeds to germinate, but what happened is they got this tall and then they literally just fell over and died. So that the likelihood is that if the soil is damp, if it's dry, that means that you killed them because you didn't water them. So we're going to talk about how to water them too. But if they just fell over and your soil was moist, you had an organism, most likely, at least one of the organisms that can cause damping off is Phytophthora infestans, which is the organism that caused the Irish potato famine. It attacks little plants at a cold, on cold, damper soil, It loves those conditions, especially plants that are crowded and being grown inside. And it attacks them right at the soil line, which is why they fall over like so many trees that have been cut down right at the level of the ground. So one of the ways to avoid this, if you're starting indoors, you don't want to water full on from the top. You want to get a container. It's a little bit larger. This has holes in it. But you want to get a container that doesn't have holes in it. Oh, this one's solid. You want to get a solid container, run about an inch of water in it. You take one of these little containers out, and these do have holes in the bottom. You put it in the pan of water and you let the water soak up from the bottom. This does two things. It helps your plants reach toward the bottom and develop good root structure, good solid strong root structure. And it prevents you from washing the seeds around so that you have so that you've essentially created your own version of soil erosion. And it also helps keep that soil less cold and damp so that you don't invite Phytophthora infestans. But the other way you can avoid that particular type of disease is plain old chamomile tea. It doesn't matter what brand it is, as long as all it has in it is chamomile. If you have something else in it, flavoring or something that might be something your plants don't like, but if you stick with absolutely plain chamomile, and that's all this has in it, I don't know if you can see that. It literally has nothing but chamomile in it. You can often get these at dollar stores. You can order these online. This is Celestial Seasonings, and if you don't have this, don't worry about it, but it is something that's cheap and easy to keep around. And you can see that all that has in it is chamomile. But if you have chamomile, just make a double strength, take 2 bags and put it in a large cup, let it steep, let it cool off, put it in a spray bottle. All this is water and chamomile. This is just plain old straight chamomile tea. And once it's cool, you don't want to do this when it's hot. Leave it at room temperature, let it cool down, just so it's room temperature. And you can mist your plants very, very lightly at the top. You don't, just enough to give them a little bath, especially if they're under lights, because any kind of light, you probably should have them under lights if you don't have a really, really great window. So if you mist them very, very lightly with this, chamomile is antifungal and antibacterial. I used to think that that was something that was made up. I used to think that was garden folklore, and that is the absolute truth. Chamomile is one of the herbs that is both antifungal and antibacterial. So it is certainly beneficial for plants. It may also provide a little nitrogen to give them a very light fertilizer boost. These particular plants I am not going to fertilize. They have a very minute amount of fertilizer in the seed starting soil, tiny, tiny amounts. So as we go on with this, I will start fertilizing them. Again, these will be first because they're going to start to, they are going to start to need fertilizer, I would say, in 5 to 6 days. And that's to support root growth, not to get them to grow faster, taller. And so with tomatoes, what I'm going to do is use a high phosphorus, fertilizer of some sort, probably bone meal or something else that it has a high, where you see the NPK. I'm looking for a higher number in the middle. So thanks for joining us, and I'm glad you checked back in with us to see what was going on with them. I'm very pleased with them. We'll talk about peppers later on this week. And so again, hashtag healthy at home, hashtag growing for Andy. We appreciate you checking in with us. Hope your gardens are doing really well, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks.